Hey, I'm ZSH Plays, and today we're putting guests in an aviary in a boat. There are no mods in this build, so how do we do it? I'll show you. Today we're completing Jurassic Park. Alongside the aviary, there'll be the Pteratops Lodge, the Jungle River Ride, Proceratosaurus, Metriacanthosaurus, Compsognathus, and of course the Pteranodons. Before we build the aviary, we need to get our guests there, and the way we're going to do that is with the Jungle River Ride. We're on the other side of the map to the park tour here, and this is going to take people from the opposite side of the visitor centre along the river. We'll be using the Cretaceous cruise to make this, and as the guests go down the river, they will go past habitats for Proceratosaurus, Metriacanthosaurus, and two of the Brachiosaurs, which we're going to move over from the lake. So we still have 5 in here. And at the end of the river will be the aviary, where the guests will transfer from their kayaks to Jurassic Park style yellow rafts to explore the aviary. So we're going to go through this part really quickly. We'll be using the Jungle River Cruise based on the concept art for Jurassic Park that we already built in the first Jurassic World Evolution 3 video on the channel. So we won't spend too much time on this. We're going to very quickly get to how to get people into the aviary. We've added groundwater in around the building, and all we need to do now is add paths in over this suspended walkway, and there we go. That is the beginning of the Jungle River Ride done. We'll lay the tracks in past the habitats that we've laid out roughly until we get down to the end where the aviary is. We'll widen out the lake at the end and put another Jungle River Ride down here and connect the tracks, and then we just need to run the track back to the first one, and we've got the loop that we need. We're also going to drop in a Hyperloop terminal to get our guests up here without having to put paths in. We'll give this a nice Jurassic Park style theme, and then we can move on to the boat. As you know, we can't run a Cretaceous cruise into an aviary, we can't put paths into an aviary. The only way to get guests in there is with a viewing dome, but these benches auto-generate people on them when you place them down. Now, you can't place these into an aviary either, but I discovered after much experimenting making this video that you can place these benches down and then place an aviary on top of them. That enables us to get them into the aviary. Now all we need is a boat. Now, obviously, this boat is not functioning in terms of moving or carrying people anywhere, but we can have it sat in the middle of the water with people in it, and they will sit there and look around and gaze in wonder at the Pteranodons. We just need to work out how to build a boat. I wouldn't have guessed this, but the perfect piece for building the yellow rafts from the Jurassic Park River Ride is actually the Portaloo. Not sure what you guys call it in America, but that's what we call it here, a portable toilet. This has got exactly the right shape and texture to make the main body of the raft, and then we're going to use various other pieces to build the rest of it. Modelling all of this on the Jurassic Park ride at Universal Studios, which was actually designed by the team from Jurassic Park while they were making the film. I think they kind of knew the film was going to be a massive hit before they'd even finished it. As limited as the guests are in this game, it is actually really useful to have these pieces which just auto-generate guests without the guests having to sort of carve their way there. Definitely a great tool for building. Let's finish off the boat now. We're going to be using this packing crate to create the back of it. Again, it's just got the right texture for what we want here. The back of the boat is red for the main part, and then with a black part in the middle, which is, I think, supposed to sort of represent an engine, even though the ride is on a track. So we'll just keep playing around with this piece in different colours until we get something that matches the concept art. If you're enjoying this video, by the way, don't forget to hit the like button, and if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you can see the full park tour, which will be coming out on Monday. Almost done with the back of the boat now. We're just going to use this piece here on both sides to finish it off. And then we will move on to putting in the black stripe which runs around the whole boat. I tried a load of different pieces to do this, but in the end this girder seemed to work best. We can just poke up one end of the girder just next to the join in the portaloos there. And if we colour it black, we can then just run it down the length of the boat and curve it around the front, and then the rest of the boat until we get it back to where we started. Scaling tool, so useful for things like this. The curve in the boat here isn't as long as that piece, so we'll just scale it down a bit till it fits. This part of the boat's looking pretty janky at the moment. We're going to fix that using one of the primitive shapes. We can just poke that through all the parts where there are holes and get a nice smooth curve instead of the rather janky look that we've got there. We'll run some ropes down the side of the boat, which is what the real ride has. This is where it really starts to come to life, I think. We'll have 3 of these ropes along the side, and then we're going to fix them in using an upside down light. We're just going to use the fixings for the light right here to get those ropes secured. And then we're going to take this fence piece and use this to create safety rails around the back here. We'll have 4 of these, 2 on each side. And then we can recolor the benches so they fit in seamlessly with everything else. And that is our boat, or raft I should say, completed. Looks a little bit strange sunk into the floor like that, but once we get it into the water, it's going to look much better. So let's get back to the aviary and put the water in. Now that's done, we need to delete the aviary. And as you can see, we can now use those guest benches here. We'll get it to the right level and we'll add our new guest raft in. looks so much better in the water, and then we can put the aviary back. No obstructed messages here. We'll line it up exactly with the Jungle River ride, place some more domes in, and there we go. We've got our boat in the aviary. We've done a lot of building so far, so let's go and add in the 3 new dinosaurs, which are going to go down the route of the river ride. A long, thin enclosure for the Proceratosaurus, because they're pretty small by dinosaur standards. We're going to have a more dry, rocky look, and obviously a much larger habitat for the Metriacanthosaurus. We'll use a mixture of sand and rocks for that. And then in the middle of it all will be a massive habitat for the 2 brachiosaurs. We're going to have jungle at the back, a clearing at the front to make sure they're visible, and then we're going to run paths through the jungle into a little clearing in the middle in case our brachiosaurs ever want to get away from the guests. Although at that size, I'm not sure they'll be bothered. And there we go, we've got Proceratosaurus there, nice and close to the fence. We got one of our brachiosaurs, and in the background you can see Metriacanthosaurus. I've also added free-roaming compies to all the herbivore habitats so that we can get them into the park as well. Now it's time to build the Pteratops Lodge. This is a very cool looking hotel which sits inside the aviary. You can see it in the dinner scene in Jurassic Park on the screens behind them as one of the future attractions. It's going to take some building because it's pretty complex, but it's going to look really good when it's finished. The building is circular, which means we basically just need to build one slice of it, and once we've got one part of it looking good, we can just duplicate and rotate that round to create the entire structure, and then we'll deal with the roof and the base and all the detailing later. This building plays a much bigger role in the original Jurassic Park novel than it does in the film. It's one of the many things from the novel that were cut to save costs. In the novel, the Jurassic Park aviary is complete, and the hotel is under construction, but the Pteratopsilus that they have in there keep attacking the workers so they can't finish it. In the movie universe, it's the Pteranodon rather than Pteratopsilus that lives here. We see those in the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, of course, so that's what we're going to be having in here. Brilliantly, the Jurassic Park 3 Pteranodons have teeth, despite Pteranodon literally meaning wing without teeth, but I like the way they look and they match the films, so that is what we're going to be having in here. That's the first level of the structure complete. We're going to go up now and add a window in here which will be slanted backwards with a little view of a hotel room inside. The floor below it I figured would be kind of a viewing area, probably restaurants and bars and things like that as well. And then we're going to move to the back part of the structure and get that door and everything else shifted back so we can get this matching the concept art that we see in the film. Let's get a roof on it now. I'm using the Chuckum pieces because they've got this really nice curved edge. Works really well for buildings like this. And then I'm just using a simple asphalt piece to put the floor in. This will be the underside of the structure, so no one's going to be seeing this. So we want to use a fairly cheap looking piece for that. I've lined this up exactly with the side of the aviary so that when we duplicate and rotate this, it's going to fit snugly inside the aviary and follow the same curve as the back half of the last aviary dome here. And now we've got that one piece completed, we will duplicate it within the same group, spin it round in the opposite direction, place it down, get it lined up exactly where we want it in this aviary. There we go, looking nice, if a little strange at the moment, but this one piece is going to create the entire Pteratops Lodge for us. And now all we need to do is rotate it into place. Alright, we'll select the whole group now, and then we'll go to duplicate, and we're just going to start spinning this around and making sure it all lines up, and we'll keep doing that until we've got the full circle. I've moved it out of the aviary to do this just because it's easier to work with without having the aviary roof in the way. A couple more pieces to go. All done. Obviously there won't be doors in every panel once it's finished. We'll just keep the ones that we want and add loads more detailing in. We'll move it into the aviary where it should line up perfectly. Add a hatchery so we can get our Pteranodons later. But now it's sat in the aviary. It's starting to look impressive. Let's move on to the roof. There are some really interesting shapes on the roof in the concept art. It kind of spirals up in a set of white steps, and then there's a big sail behind it as well. We've got some pieces that are going to do the job for us there. These Chuckum pieces, which are thinner at the top than they are at the bottom, will work really well. And then we've got a big sail already, so we can just use that. And we just need to fill it in with some triangular pieces as well. There's also a big communications array and antennae as well, which we will add in later. And that'll be the roof completed. Let's move on to the base. You can't actually see the base of this in the concept art, so I'm just going to put a simple white plaster circle in for the moment, and then we're going to cover it up with some of the fossil murals later on. That'll look really nice, contrast with all this white concrete, and just sit in the background looking good. Then we'll build the really impressive claw-like structure at the front of the building, again mainly just using plaster panels and Chuckum poles. Again, we'll just build one section of this and then rotate it into place, and then we'll build the big spires that sit at the front of this and kind of slant in towards the structure. This is really starting to come together now, but what we need to do next is to actually give our guests a way of getting up here. So we're going to do that with a raised path that goes from the lagoon at the front of the aviary up to the entrance to the lodge. I thought it'd be fun to kind of build this like a cage, inspired by the one that you see in Jurassic Park 3. Why we're so intent on protecting the guests at this stage when we've just left them sat in a boat right next to the pteranodons, I have no idea, but I thought it'd look cool. And unsurprisingly, we're going to build this using the cage pieces. So we'll just build a section of it, and then we can have this coming down diagonally from the entrance to the lodge down to the floor. This won't be functional, of course. The guests will be stuck in their raft, but it's important to make everything look like it would work if they were able to move. And then we're going to add a pier in where people would get off the raft and then make their way up the ramp into the lodge. We'll delete a few pieces here to create the gap where they would get off the raft, and then it's onto the rock work and the foliage. So I want loads of rocks in here. We're going to build a pile of it here and then hide one of the perch points in it so the pteranodons will actually land on this rock. We're going to have loads of perch points hidden around this build to make sure they're as active as possible. And we're going to use some of the boulder paint to get even more rocks in here without having to place them all ourselves. And then we're going to use some massive rocks to join the hill next to the aviary onto the aviary. So it looks like the aviary's been built into the hill. We need to place those really carefully so they line up exactly with the main support struts of the aviary, and that's what will make it look like it was built into the rocks rather than it was built and then we spam loads of rocks on top of it. I want a waterfall here. Can't get one in with terrain, so we're just going to have a load of upside down fountains and cover them up with rocks. Get something that looks really natural. If we just keep copying the fountains next to each other, we get more of the effect of a waterfall rather than individual streams of water. A few more rocks and then I think we're done here. And then finally extend that rock wall around the back of the aviary so everything's tied together. Alright, let's finish off all the landscaping and foliage and rocks that we need inside this aviary. So we're going to use various different brushes, mainly the wetlands and the forest brush, and then one of the grassland brushes gives us some nice plants in the water. We'll place a few individual trees as well where we need them when we can't get them in with the foliage brush, making sure we don't cover up too much of the Pteratops Lodge. It's an impressive structure, so we want to be able to see it. And then we'll add one final perch point in for the pteranodons here. I wanted kind of a low rock pretty close to the water so we can see them land there. So we'll cover that up with some scaevola bushes. And there you go, that is the aviary pretty much completed. Really pleased with how that's looking. We just got one more thing to do, which is to get our guests in and out of the aviary, or make it look like they can get in and out of the aviary. So at the station terminal, whatever you would call it, for the riverboat ride, we're going to build a Jurassic Park style building here, mainly using the visitor center pieces. This doesn't need to be super impressive because it sits in between the nice thatched building at the end of the riverboat ride and the aviary. This is where people would get off their kayaks, come into here, and then they would go on the path down to the entrance, and then they would go in larger groups and get onto their rafts and sail around the lagoon. We'll extend this part of the building here to cover up that Hyperloop terminal that we need. Makes the building look more interesting anyway, having an irregular shape. We'll use the visitor center door. They've got somewhere to go in, do some detailing on the roof, maybe some pteranodon statues in front of the building to show what's in here. And that'll be this building completed, and we can move on to the last thing we're going to do today, which is create a gateway inside the aviary where the rafts would get in and out. In order to do that, we're going to use a technique which I heard about from my good buddy Leaf. If you like Planet Zoo, you'll know all about him, which is if you want to build something in the Jurassic Park style, sometimes you can find exactly what you need on the buildings that are in the game already. And because they're modular now, you can just break off the bit you need and use it yourself. So we're going to do that with the Jurassic Park themed hatchery. This big industrial looking chunk here will do nicely. We're going to place 3 of these in a curve that matches the visitor center walls. And then all we need to do is delete parts of it until we get an opening in the middle that you could put a raft through. Put some extra columns in, and that will be the entrance and exit for the boats. That is the build complete, and we can go and get our pteranodons. Here they are. Noisy little dudes, aren't they? Let's take the full trip to our new aviary. We'll start at the visitor center, and the bottom left you can see the Safari Lodge, which I have finally got round to building. Through the beginnings of the Jungle River ride, past our Proceratosaurus, I raised the ground in that habitat to make sure they were visible. We got our Brachiosaurs here. There's the Metriacanthosaurus, and finally we can see the aviary. This is where the guests transfer from their kayaks to their rafts, and this is where the raft comes in to the aviary. And here they are in the aviary. I think this is my favourite thing that I've built in this entire park. I was so pleased when I worked out a way to sort of do what we wanted to do here. and it's a lot of fun seeing this brought to life when it's always just been a photo at the back of one scene in the film. Thank you so much for watching. As always, guys, on Monday we will be touring the entire park, and you'll also get the workshop code so that you can go and explore this park yourself. If you want to see how I built the Jungle River Ride building, I've put a link to that video on screen now. I'll see you on Monday.